Hey everyone, glad y'all are able to join us tonight. We got a show that we're going to be discussing about what evidence um, that law enforcement has provided us to what they're possibly looking at in Peru in the Wabash River. Um, but as before we get into that, for whatever the housekeeping and everything, everybody respectful to each other and chat, debate what you wish, but be nice and kind. The mods are there for one purpose, and that's trying to make sure everything flows well, take care of whatever trolls may show up, and but respect them because they have a hard job to do for the trying to make sure that our interests are protected and that something doesn't happen. And uh, you know, we just want everybody to have a good time, enjoy it, hopefully learn some information. But anyway, with that being said, we'll get started in our show. As always, a little introduction. This is Mrs. Steve, and I'm Steve. I'm a retired law enforcement officer, 20 years of service. I've worked, started my career off in the jail, worked road patrol, and then eventually into investigations. Um, During that period, had a lot of training on a lot of different areas. Worked everything from SWAT, counter sniper to getting training and becoming a state certified crime scene tech. Um, while I was in investigations, I worked there all different kinds of cases from burglaries up to homicides. But I retired, and after I retired, decided that and seeing what was going on in the true crime world, which I only recently became aware of just a few months ago. But I saw that there was a need for um, someone with certain skill sets and backgrounds to become a ambassador for law enforcement and see if I couldn't help web sleuth community out there have an impact on us working and trying to have an impact on some of the cases they were working on. And so, with that in mind, I created this channel and been working hard at it. And we're growing, thankfully, to all our viewers in the community out there that's assisting us, supporting us. And we most certainly appreciate everything you do for us. But now we'll get into what we're going to be looking at tonight. Of course, the search continues in the Wabash River. And there's a lot of speculations of what's going on there. And most certainly, if the Delphi murders and with the movements with the Kleins and all the references that have been made to them and what involvement and what would create such a search. And it'd be more than just saying Kagan Klein says, oh, go look in the river. Law enforcement, if they're looking at him and there's something in this river, they would back that up. They would have brought in and most certainly polygraphs, interviews, what information, and did he know something that law enforcement has always said that they keep things close to their chest and they would never release? Is there someone that has released some information that no one else would know? And is that what's generated this interest in this search? But I found it extremely interesting, and being uh, the inquiring mind that I am, I decided to look into what possibly, from the way and methods that they're searching, what could they be searching for? And it was quite interesting this week. And so I did a lot of testing and did a lot of controls and determining what type of items sink at what certain rate over what distances in a moving column of water. And so that's what we're going to be covering tonight. So there's a lot of items I'll be showing you from knives to cell phones. And so that we can talk about this intelligently with others, debate it or whatever, so that we have, a baseline to go on and what possibly law enforcement is going to be doing out there. Because I found out a lot of interesting things this week about the Wabash River. And one of those is that the day of February the 13th, 2017, the Wabash River was at 11.81 feet on its gauge as far as being depth. which is a lot higher than what it is now and is above normal of what the yearly average is. And I found that interesting. That day prior to, and the time frame I looked at was at 4:30 p.m. And I did that on the 13th for a specific reason. Carter said that the deaths of the girls was already, around 3:30. Everything was over, I think is how he said. Everything was over at around 3:30 p.m. And so I looked at it and I said, okay, the distance being 36 miles, getting back to a vehicle if the clients are involved, and say they're driving at 4:30. Is it a possibility they dumped it in daylight hours? Probably not. The worst case scenario, I always go with the highs, and then that would, as we get into some of the numbers, you'll see what I'm talking about, that you always want to go with the furthest something of a search area that you're prepared to go versus starting off with a minimum, saying that's the standard and not being able to expand your search into different areas. And so once I knew that certain date that we're looking at, almost 12 feet of water for something to sink through and being moving at the same time, there was a lot of variables I had to look at. And so I also looked at for the whole year of what that Wabash River does. And you can see it goes from just over, 4 feet all the way up in 2017 to almost 16 feet that year. And so it's a highly frustrating river that has, extremely high peaks and drastically reduces down to just over 4 feet, and does that throughout the year. Of course, due to whatever the floodplains are and whatever the drainage from the surrounding that feeds this river. But then I looked at where the water is currently and what they're searching here. I think they started around the 25th of 2022 and just picked the time during the day and saw where it's just slightly over 4.5 feet on that day when they started, or in this time period when they started to search. And you can see it's going anywhere from just, under 4.5 feet up to almost 5.5 feet. So they've kept it pretty steady during this time period up to most recently whenever I pulled this graph. And so, they're working in that 1 foot range there. And I wanted to see, is this something that is common every year about the fluctuation of the river for this time of year? And most certainly last year's comparison chart to this year, very consistent. It is low this time every year. Is that something that was scheduled that they would look at and say, okay, if Klein has said something, when would be the best time that we could go in and do it? And most certainly that window of opportunity is now. And so is that part of it? But but that's something that I want to be fair and let everyone know that this is fluctuation of this river is most consistently at this time of year. This is where that river goes. I had seen some other creators out there, and other people commenting about that. Yes, it's always, or no, it's never at this level. It is at this level, has been there, been lower and been higher over the years. I went all the way back looking at all the way to 2017 and pulling up the year stats. And it fluctuates consistently from at this time of year to around where it is now. Maybe just a little bit higher, a little bit lower certain years, of course, due to whatever precipitation and what the water is. But that brings us to the bridge point here of looking at the bridges. And the river flows from the right side of your screen to the left side of your screen. And so the smaller bridge is upstream, upriver from the bigger bridge. And that's important to know because you'll be seeing where they're searching, and as they continue to search, where they're at. And thank you, Dark Arts. Does the fluctuation of the river make recovery easier or harder? Is it possible to know, especially over a 5-year period? Thank you for this research. Absolutely understanding what, and that's part of the test I did today, because I wanted to know what that sink rate was. And so that people that's working on this case now, that's doing this search, they most certainly are doing the same thing. They know everything I know, and far more, because if they have a certain item and a certain size and a certain weight, and know what the rate of fall is through the water column, sink rate of that item, they know what the parameters of where the search would be. And it's all, there's a lot of variables within the river, because just because the river's running, and it looks like it's extremely hard running rivers, there's certain spots of that river, dead center high, is the fastest part moving of the river. Edges move slower. But all this is known and is, can be charted out, and the people that are involved, and they would most certainly ask for the help in the investigation of this. They would rely upon their experiences and knowledge, and look at that. And like I said, we're looking at something that right now, at this current picture, it appears to be very close to what the water level is. And being around 4 feet. But at that 11 feet, we're talking about another 7 feet higher, which would be higher up on the banks, might even be flooding into some of the tree lines. And so that might explain some of the images that we're seeing now, that some of the law enforcement have moved up onto the banks. And is that why? Because during that critical time period of an opportunity, that they might have went to the river at a certain period of time after dark, or went over an area and it just no traffic, and they decided to toss it or toss an item. Law enforcement would know that, because if Keegan was involved and they verified and he says we went across at a certain time, they know what stage that river is, because anyone can go out there and look up the river and the information and what stage. It's all historically dated and correct, kept. And
Chris.
Oh, okay.
Cracks me up.
But is that Mobker?
Yeah.
Good to see you, Chris. Glad you're here. And he is another great creator out there that goes in and does research and does these controls and experiments. But when you go out here and you do this stuff, there's a lot of variables that we will never be able to match, but some of them we can. And so I most certainly decided that I'd take a collection of my knives and my Mrs. Steve's knives, and take them and see what the sink rate was. Couldn't go out and do it in a river, for the fact that I had to create a certain control area where I could maintain drop rates, fall rates, time rates, and everything, where I would be able to keep that data, so that I'd be speaking from some level of intelligence, and that not just guessing, because right now everyone out there is guessing about what might be in that river, where it was tossed and everything, and we are, and we're trying to figure out what this search tells us about what they're looking for. And most certainly my test this week helped me look at and what I believe they're looking for. And most certainly it's the best guess I can give you, because as close as they were to that bridge, it indicates that they're looking for something of a certain weight and certain size, or something that was weighted down. But these were the knives that we were looking at. And then also, thank you.
Thank you, Teresita.
We appreciate all the support everybody gives us through our memberships, through whatever you can and choose. And that means a lot to us. Thank you. But even introduced one of my cell phones into sinking and water environment, and to test it. And you'll see. Thank you, Chris. That means a lot, man. Most certainly, he is a great help to me, and has a great mind, and I like bouncing ideas off of him. He has a great show and a great community, probably the best community out there that I've been involved in. Second to mine, of course.
Thank you. I was
Second to
waiting
mine.
on that.
Yeah, I know.
Sorry, Chris.
Yeah, sorry, Chris, but But anyway, as I look at these things and just showing you what these items are, that I measured them, weighed them. We had this. This here is the smallest steak knife that I used. It's 9 inches, weighs 52 grams, which is around 1.8 ounces. And then went to a little bit larger knife, which is 11.5 inches, 57 grams, 2 ounces. And this butcher knife, which is in 2 pieces now.
Yeah, he worked wonders on the butcher knife.
It started off as 1 piece, but as you can see, it's 14 inches. Thank you, Melissa. Once again, we appreciate all y'all's support. It means a lot to us and will help us move forward. And then I went to a fillet knife, and if I can get this out without hurting myself, and which was one of the longer knives, and 138 grams and 4.9 ounces. And most certainly everyone has mentioned a lot of stuff about some of the injuries, speculated what has occurred and what was used, even within the FBI affidavit for the Ron Logan search. They mentioned that what types of injuries were incurred about some type of cutting instrument. And so I included a hunting knife, which is extremely heavy blade, heavy handle, and sheaths, for the fact that certain knives, that when you add on the sheath weight with the knife weight and size, it creates certain, adds on a little bit more weight. So, and then of course, this little phone, it was a 5 by 2 7/5 inch phone, weighs 180 grams, 6.3 ounces. So I had all these weights, known values, so that I could start my baseline of whenever I started going out and doing these controls. So after I did that, I had to figure out that when you look at this bridge, you've got an elevated platform over a water environment that is 20-something feet below at the normal stage now. But when you add on 8 feet something, it would probably come into the teens. And, one of the variables that we'll never know, that if anything was tossed from this bridge into that water environment, we don't know what the arc, how much force was used tossing the item out the window. Don't know if they threw it up, threw it flat, threw it down. So there's a lot of different variables that we would never know. But I try to rule out as many of those variables as I can and include them. So trying to match the height, of course, creating a water environment to toss thing in and trying to hit it by throwing it up high and dropping it into a water column is extremely difficult. So I did the next best thing. I built a platform. I took 2 sections of 10-foot pipe, extended them up, and so that I could place a knife 17 feet above the surface of the water level. And I had a large container, I think it's around 50 gallons of a container full of water, so that we had a water surface that was right around 3 feet tall. I know exact dimensions of how deep the water column was, so that I could time these items as they went through that water column, and just erase that variable. And I did this experiment with these knives so that when they fell, I could see what time they would value it was, and how it sped up the process of going through the initial entry into the water. And it most certainly lessened the amount of time. And so it was a great experiment, learned a lot. And, standing over here to the side, trying not to get hit with a knife, this isn't something that you should try at home.
Although you did.
Although I did. I'm a trained professional.
That was in my yard, y'all.
Yeah, this is in our yard here beside my boat. But as I dropped these knives and did it, most of the afternoon and dropping it into that water column. As you can see here, the knife is fully at full mass. Drop the knife and hit the bullseye. And I created this platform so I could hit that bullseye time after time after time, and see what the effects were and what the time it took it to sink from surface of the water down the 32 inches of water till it hit the bottom of the water column. And as you see, that when that knife hit that water surface, it was moving, and most certainly created quite the splash. But my camera survived it time after time, thank goodness. But I did all this for the purpose of is trying to establish what the entry would be on water if it was tossed. And then I've said, well, what if it was tossed from the bridge and it hit some type of obstruction, such as a tree limb or something going down the river, and so you wouldn't have full speed. And which brings in the variable that you want that sink rate to be as slow as possible. And there's only one way to make that sink rate as slow as possible, is that you have to, at the top, at water level, top surface, just drop it sideways as easy as possible, let it break the surface, and time this fall rate through the water column and the sink rate. And then you establish and do the averages. And so I sat out there and ran through all these knives and this phone and timed that time from the time it hit the top of the water, from basically 1 inch above the water, hitting the column and going all the way to the bottom of the 32 inches of water column, and came up with a great baseline. So the sink rate and the downstream travel gave me this information. I found out that this little steak knife, it sinks at per foot 0.62 seconds. And each of these knives, as you can see, sank at different rates. Although most of them, like the medium knife, the butcher knife, and the fillet knife, all was in that 1.3, 1.9, 1.11. So it's very close on all their the values that they had that allowed them to go through that column. Now the hunting knife, which was extremely short, heavy, it went down and just over, it sinks at a half a foot, just over a half a foot per, it sinks at a foot 0.55 seconds. So every half a second, it going through the water column, a half, 1 foot for every half second. And then the phone, it takes it almost 2 seconds for it to go per foot. So it was, just sailing down through the water column side to side. Even when I released it like this, it instantly and just would tumble down and float down, and it'd take it almost 2 seconds per foot. So when you take the amount of time it needs to go per foot and measure it and calculate and multiply it by the depth that it was at 4:30 on the 17th, that gives me the time elapsed that when from the time that instrument hits the top of the water, in the worst case scenario being as gentle as possible, that it's, as you can see, the steak knives, it takes it almost 7.5 seconds. Medium knife and the butcher knife, 12 point something seconds. The fillet knife, just over 13 seconds. But the hunting knife, from the time it hits the water at 11.81 feet, it only takes it 6 seconds to get to the river bottom. And the phone, it takes 23 seconds. If it was 11.81 feet, it would take that phone 23 seconds, which is a variable that we have to look at, and we have to add on something else. We're not talking about a river that is stationary like what my water environment is. That once it hits that water column is moving downstream. And so now we have to know the speed of the river. And so I looked up the speed of the Wabash River, and it's known to have speeds all the way up to 8 miles per hour. And so I went to my calculator, looked up miles per hour to foot per second, and put that in. so that I could take what the time frame it took for an item to sink and multiply it by this, and it comes up with this here sink rate and downstream travel. That if this steak knife it takes it 7.322 seconds, and at different miles per hour, from 8, if it's moving, if that river was moving at 8 miles an hour, this steak knife would go 86 feet down stream. This medium knife would go 143 feet downstream. This butcher knife, in its full capacity, would go 151 feet downstream before it hit the bottom of the river. The fillet knife, 154 feet. The hunting knife, 76 feet. 25 yards basically is as far as this hunting knife would go if it was dropped and had gently entered. If it was dropped with force, it'd be shorter than 76 feet. But the phone was surprising that it would travel almost a football field, so 274 feet. So when we look at that, and most certainly as you look at the chart here, 6 miles per hour, less distance, 4 miles per hour, less distance, 2 miles per hour, most certainly less distance. And so we calculate all those in, and that tells us how far down the river are they looking at and where are they looking, so that we can have something to understand that most certainly as close as they're looking at that bridge, they're looking for something that's heavy and would sink quickly. Although they're expanding that search as we go downriver, is there other things? But another variable that we don't know that we have to calculate in is you're traveling over that bridge and you decide to throw something out of the car, which that's what led to the 2 parts of this knife. Is that as I practiced throwing these things, both backhanded out a window of my car, and how far it went. And as you can see, pretty consistent that all the knives went somewhere in the low 20s to mid 20s being backhanded out of the window of a car, well, which surprised me. Even the phone, same thing. Only went, I averaged 20 something feet throwing it, and I throwed it multiple times. But unfortunately, when I was throwing them overhand, my butcher knife on the second throw overhand, when it landed at 60 feet, it broke. So that's only had 2 throws on the butcher knife to get. The others had multiple throws. So you'd have to average that whatever the river was moving at the time that he throwed it in, if in optimal circumstances that say it is a hunting knife, you'd have to add 46 feet on to 76 feet. And, you know, when you add those 2 numbers together, I think it comes out to what, 122? Mm-hmm. And so 122 feet, if they're looking for a hunting knife, they're going to be doing a lot of searching in that first 122 feet. Is that what they're doing? What evidence I've looked at clues with that, most certainly. Now, there's been some speculation also if you're looking for a camera or something digital or a cell phone, that we're looking at probably, 300 feet, 100 yards, which is still surprising that even if we look at it and it did hit bottom, is the water going to be dark arts? Thank you. Funds to go to a new butcher.
Thank you.
Yeah, she'll appreciate
That's
that.
priceless.
Oh yeah, I've heard it. I've heard about the knife since it broke. So thank you. But that just because it hits riverbed doesn't mean that's where it's going to stop. That there may be certain rolling and movement over certain time frames, but once silt starts building up over it and sediment, that's where it is, and that's why we got these metal detectors out there. That we're looking for something most certainly contains metal or looking at metal. But we went through all this, and I went in there, and like I said, I realized a lot of things and decided that rather than just watching everyone argue about, well, what are we looking for, that we have some type of baseline. And that's what I, committed myself to this week, is trying to figure out what they're looking for. And my best guess right now is that if there was a weapon involved and they're looking up close, that they're looking for some type of a heavy knife. But like I said, that's just my 2 cents, my opinion. And but we'll get into the questions and everything. But as always, while they search for this, and this is, you can see, is relatively close to the river bridge, because the river bridge is still casting a shadow just this side of them. And so that tells you that either they're looking for something that has been weighted down by artificial means, or they're looking for something that wouldn't have traveled very far and would have been tossed in a very shallow period, which would, like I said, you can look at the river heights throughout the day and decide what fits your best guess. But and then, as always, if you have any information on this case, most certainly let the law enforcement know. Talk to them about it. Call in that one tip that they need. Let's bring this case to a close. If you're the holder of that information, we most certainly need to bring justice to these two young innocent victims. He tore up one of his phones. It burned up. But actually, it was a race for me to do this against him, because I know that he most certainly goes out and creates some tests, and he did some water tests last week, some controls, and I was, saying, okay, can I do mine before he does? So we're in competition. We don't tell each other what we're doing, but we're always in competition. But also, as we move along with our platform and all our support and everything, and as we look at the what we're impact that we can have on cold cases, not just with the Delphi, but other cases. Mrs. Steve here has been working hard on getting the Cyclops up. All our volunteers out there that continue to give us information and look up that data and do the research, we most certainly owe you utmost respect and gratitude that what you're doing for us is helping so many different. Thank you, True Crime with Shannon. It means a lot. Like I said, everybody's support allows us to do this. And as we move forward into October, I made some calls yesterday, and we're doing some scheduling. So that's moving forward to doing some traveling coming up in October to go help 3 cold cases that I'm working on currently.
You want to talk about Texas?
Oh, yes. Also, if there's anyone that's in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, I have a cold case. I need some boots on the ground. I already have one out there that will orchestrate, but I need some other assistance in this area. If you're in the Dallas-Fort Worth area and want to do some research on a certain case, send me an email. That's at steve@truecrimeweb.com. steve@truecrimeweb.com. Send me an email if you're in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. I need some research done, boots on the ground. Probably take about a day and a half. If we get enough people, just one day. So I'm not just looking for one person. If you've got a friend or two that can help you and you want to help me, most certainly reach out to me, because we appreciate it, because it's something that most certainly is worthy of the cause. And thank you, but we'll get into the questions now.
All right. So let's go back to the front. And we had a bunch on chat when we logged in tonight, so that was fabulous. So, but now
Thank you.
I have to.
Thank you.
Now I have to go search. Let's see here. Somebody said they were excited to hear your theories, and you always have a theory. I can tell you that. Let's see here. Somebody mentioned the Google machine. So far, so good. But
I didn't try to see the sync rate of the Google machine yet.
Yeah, not yet. I wouldn't let him touch it. All right, let's see here. All right, Raggedy Susan. Ooh, there's been a lot of trolls out there. All right, so we'll keep going. All right, so here we go. I need to be at 8:03, I think. Well, I said the Google machine was doing good. Let's see here. All right. Dark Arts, TCW equals #1 best coverage.
Thank
Good
you.
job, buddy.
Thank you.
And SP74, Steve, you put the true and true crime world. Thank you.
Thank you. And like
Don't gonna blow his head up mighty big.
No. But like I said, when they're looking there that close to the bridge, I most certainly think it's going to be something that's heavy, maybe bigger, maybe smaller. We don't know. But of all of them, this would be the shortest distance and the fastest sink rate for the 11.81 feet, worst case scenario. And so that'd be my best guess. Doesn't mean it's, it is what it is, but being that close, it has to have something of weight. Is it something that's weighted down by artificial means? That's something like a cell phone that could be weighted down? Absolutely. We don't know what law enforcement knows. We don't know what law enforcement's been told. All we know is what clues law enforcement gives us by where their search pattern is. And so that's what we have to work on.
All right. And True Crime with Marvin Frank. Does Deer Creek flow into the Wabash?
I believe it does.
All right.
I believe it, yes.
I think that was.
Yeah, I think I saw where someone the other day was talking about you could canoe all the way. I think, I can't remember who it was that said that, but you could canoe all the way from Peru if you wanted to.
Oh, that's right. Thank you, Lynn.
Thank you. Like I said, we appreciate all the support we can, and means a lot to us. Very nice of you, very kind of you.
Remember when I said that the Google machine was working?
It's not.
Well, it did, but everything updated. So now I'm having to backtrack. Okay, so hold on. All right, so here we go. We have. Oh, shit. Okay.
She's having a hard time.
I am having a hard time. Every time I scroll up, it sends me back down. So I'm not sure what's going on. Okay, here we go. We're good. JDR, how long did it take BG to do it?
From what the window of opportunity was, from the time the girls were dropped off to the time that family started looking for them, in which law enforcement says everything was over within a short period. Libby turned the video, and the video was on. We're only looking at 2:16 to 3:30, so you're looking at around an hour or so. Just it's not that long a period for the deaths of 2 young children that are abducted at one point and are that they're moved to another location, which is several hundred feet away for their deaths to occur. So their time is being used. And so for the actual deaths and for this killer, the psychopath, to commit that crime is a very narrow window of just basically minutes.
All right. And Don Spain, did Carter say 3:30? I thought that came from Erskine text.
If I ain't mistaken, I think Carter also said that, but I think I heard that reference made by some law enforcement officer also. But and I don't, I know it's based upon something that I heard, and I thought it was from the law enforcement.
All right. And Molly, from the search depth map, must have been raining after 9/1 to 9/8 plus. Anyone local know if there were a lot of storms?
Had to be something for that surge to move, because, like I said, you can check it hourly, and their gauges and the flow rate, which these people and these specialists and the ones that are out there that are assisting in this search, they'll be able to calculate because they have the exact dimensions of the width of that river at that stage, the depth of the river at that stage. So they'll be able to calculate the flow stream, whereas I'm having to speculate because I don't know exact numbers. And that's how come I did a variable from 8 mile an hour all the way down to 2 mile an hour. They'll know exactly what when they punch all those numbers in, how fast that river was running in that stretch of the river. And so they'll be able to have a far greater understanding of what items and how far an item could travel downstream.
And Mississippi Granny, is this their first river search?
You know, I don't know. It's the first one that we became aware of back in August. Had they done prior searches? I don't know, but the first one that I became aware of that possibly was related to this, because I think there's other, there's always in rivers and stuff, searches going on, especially if you have a drowning or something that may be unrelated to this. Or thank you, Dark Hearts. Are there any stats on successful recovery of crime-related items in bodies of water? I don't know if there's stats on them or not, but I know that they're extremely hard to do. We searched a lot of times, and but if you look at what the has occurred with the Riley case, Adventures with a Purpose, that the actual locating of persons and people that go missing is very low, and Adventures with a Purpose has proven that they can go out there and look later and with their expertise now and find a lot of these. So it's extremely low in law enforcement field because over the years now, as they get better, and we're going to start learning a lot more about water searches because Adventures of the Purpose has brought a narrative to the table that people are going to expect better from law enforcement, and they should. And law enforcement's going to have to step up to the plate and understand this underwater recovery far better. So we should see improvement across the boards for regardless of what items they're looking for. I know there's, back when I started, we never even, there wasn't anything close resembling a course about evidence from recovery of moving bodies of water and stuff. Everything was done with drag lines and magnets. You didn't have personnel in the water. And so it's advanced far greater and better now. Although you can still most certainly recover in the same old fashioned method, but it's not up to what the CSI standards that law enforcement is moving towards. So the future will change on how law enforcement continues with their water searches.
All right. And True Crime with Shannon, they have been out there for weeks, Mississippi Granny. So how long did we say it? Didn't we say it was close to a month or 4 weeks or something?
You're only looking at around 20 days, but work weeks, 5 days on, which I don't know if they've been searching on weekends also. But as far as work week, we're almost approaching 4 work weeks, 5-day work weeks.
Okay. And Dark Arts, I'd hope the silt would trap the item, whatever it is.
And like I said, whatever the item is, when it hit the bottom, if it hit a rock, got wedged, and then covered up, or it may have, a flood came in and moved it. But most certainly, once it gets into that river rock, which I think Wabash River is limestone, if I ain't mistaken from some of the articles I've seen, that maybe it got into some of that white rock and has maintained it wherever it is. And have they already recovered some items? May have. They may be looking for additional items. Don't know.
And the mob crew, just here to gain wisdom from the best.
Thank you, sir. Very kind of you.
I think he says that about you, Chris.
I do. Look forward to working with you on some other cases as we move forward too. Extremely intelligent man.
All right. And Ann, this is fascinating data. Thank you, Mr. Steve, for all the analysis work. But still, 12 feet High point is not deep. Would the perp really think that was a good drop point for a lethal crime weapon?
Well, in law enforcement, you're not usually dealing with super genius criminals. They're not masterminds, and which does allow law enforcement a lot of times to catch them quickly. Did they make a mistake? I hope they did. I hope this is the mistake they made. Thank you, Vanessa.
Vanessa Marie.
Thank you. That means a lot to us. Like I said, all the support we can get means so much to us, and we'll move forward and try to do everything we can as we move forward to having an impact on a lot of families. That's what we want to do. And y'all most certainly are giving us that platform to do so.
All right, keep talking.
Okay. Oh, she's still looking.
I'm almost there. All right, so let's see here. Okay, so there's the first one. Okay, here we go.
Huh?
All right, and Andrew Derringer, it makes me wonder what Ellie has on TK for them to be pushing that direction so hard right now.
Well, whatever they have on whoever they have has got to be verified. Whatever information from whoever they got it from, which most certainly from what the murder sheet says and some of the movements and what's happening with the releases and transfers, that we hope that it is for this one push to getting whoever bridge guy, this psychopath, in custody. That's what we have to do, because as long as he's out there, he is a threat.
All right, and William at Steve, do you believe we'll finally know who bridge guy is soon?
I
hope so.
I'm feeling, since I've, like I said, I'm new to the case. I've only looked at it for about 4 months now, but this is the highest hopes I've had in those 4 months. There was a lot of times there that I was doubting and sensing that was going that route to cold case, but I'm very positive for the amount of time and efforts that's been put into this river. This isn't normal. The time that they're putting in this river is not normal.
All right, and True Crime with Shannon. So out of all those items in the river, do you think it was one more than another?
I most certainly do think that if it is a knife, it's a heavy knife for as close as they're looking at the bridge, or it's something that would have been weighed down. Like I said, whatever information they have, it has to have something that carries weight that would sink through that water column extremely quickly, even in a moving river at whatever rate it was moving on the stream flow.
And Patricia Burns, I've got to say, you ain't been around for very long, but I'm consistently surprised by your innovative approach to solving crimes. Bravo.
Thank you. Thank you. That means a lot.
Always been that way.
But government put a lot of money in my training, and I try to make the best use of everything I've learned. And it helped me in my investigative career, and hopefully it'll help us. As we use our collective minds, and maybe we can have a great impact.
And Anne, how well, after 4 years underwater, could a weapon like a, quote, generic hunting knife be linked to the actual crime scene? I wonder if LE has evidence of a suspect buying such a knife, like receipts.
It could be that they've, regardless of the type of instrument that is used to cause the death of a person, there's always, you can have identifying patterns that each weapon will leave on a person. You may have the depth of or the length of a knife blade. You may have the width, you may have the thickness, you may have bruising caused by certain parts of the knife that will come in contact with skin. And there's so many parts of a knife that can leave distinguishing marks on skin. And, I've seen them over the years, just like, I've seen people that have been battered with just about anything you can imagine. And sometimes you can identify by just looking at the injuries exactly what it was. But whenever they go in and do those autopsies, Lord, they're $10. You both are the best and so caring for Libby, Abby, and their families. Thanks, Mr. Steve.
That is your... And I was questioning that earlier. Thank you so much.
Yes. And, Libby and Abby deserve no less than everyone's best efforts. And because they most certainly did everything they could to identify their killer that day. They took pictures, caught audio, and what else could you ask? This is such a rare crime to have such evidence against someone and still be at this point 5 years later. But most certainly, we look forward to the day that their efforts serves and brings justice to this psychopath.
And Mindy, I always support our law enforcement, retired or active. So thank you.
Thank you. Means a lot. There's a lot of good officers out there, and there's a lot of, and there's some bad apples in there too. But most certainly, we need to weed them out. But all in all, those officers, the ones out there on these task force that are working this case, that these men that's been standing out there in that river. I don't know what the water temp is, but there's always risk involved in this stuff, and so you have to. I take my hats off to them for being able, because can you imagine being bent over as much as they've been bent over for 3 weeks? My age, I understand, but every time you look out there and you see these videos made of these people looking at river, you see them either partially submerged or totally submerged or bent over, that is hard on a human's body.
All right. And unsolved crimes uncovered. Steve, do you think LE will recover whatever it is that's in that river after almost 6 years? I would think ground penetrating radar would be of utmost importance as a starting point.
And, the ground penetrating radar or the metal detecting, I don't know which is far more superior. I would, and I don't know, but I would most certainly know that there's a lot of stuff that has been recovered with the metal detecting equipment. I don't know anything about ground penetrating radar in river environments. I know on disturbed grounds that's not in river, it's highly effective. But I'm still trying to research that to see if that is something that they could use in the river. Don't know, because you're really down. The river is really almost down to bedrock. And so it's not like there's going to be a great depth, because, of course, you do have certain areas that will build up with sediment, but it's not of great thickness because it's constantly moves and is washed away. But I've still got to research that.
And from Ann, just seems to me for all, excuse me, for all the time and money now spent on this river search, which is pretty incredible, it must be something very specifically identifiable. In other words, specific to the crime scene somehow. Absolutely
agree with you 100%. I don't see any other way, because like I said, the time, effort, and what was, is this the tip that they wanted? They most certainly acting like it is the tip that will solve this.
Mm-hmm. And this is awkward. Straight from the horse's mouth. Steve, is the rumors true about Douglas Carter flying a helicopter over the Chrysler plant about a month ago?
I've heard or watched some YouTube where that was going on, that they were discussing that. And what does that mean? I don't know. I know that a couple of individuals worked there at one point.
And somebody changed her name to the Google machine. I don't know who that is. That is priceless. Changed my name due to respect for Mr. and Mrs. Steve. It was Joe Good there for a while, so there you go. Let's see here. And Michelle, there are so many factors that can affect how items in water can move, etc.
Exactly. There's so many variables. And that's how come, I did what I did trying to take out some of those variables. But most certainly anyone out there that has any type of skill sets or whatever, run your own tests, come up with whatever it is, and try to come up with your best guess if you wish to do that. I just have always looked at my career and looked at things that that if I was tasked to say that, oh, we're looking for a certain item in this water environment, how would we go about giving our best guess of where we should look? And that would be doing these controls and trying to understand whatever that water environment is, and starting there and working out from that. But yeah, there's so many variables. You're 100% correct, Michelle, that there's so much on it that, that could happen, and whatever item it is, it could be just about anywhere. But I would believe that it would be in that first 100 yards.
All right. And James, I've never heard of murder investigation where the cops don't release cause of death. Utter bizarre.
I've seen quite a few of them over the years, but every agency has its reasons for certain things, and what information they release, and all of them have to live with the facts of what they release and what they don't release.
And Anne, I think it's pretty remarkable for LE to send dozens of persons waiting around the river for weeks and weeks. I've never heard of anything like it.
I haven't either. But that tells me the importance of why of what's there. It's most certainly that they're going to prove what has been told to them, or they're going to disprove. Thank you, Laura.
Thank you, Laura.
Thank you. Means a lot. Absolutely. And still have that one outlier that did someone go out there and accidentally magnet fish and get the item, and they have it at home now. That's my worst fear, that somebody just by accident found what they're looking for. That's my worst case scenario on this case, is that, and will they address that issue if they don't find it? Probably so.
All right. And I probably skipped some because it's refreshed again. But this is from Anne. Wouldn't it have been quicker and less personnel intensive to pull in a barge and just dredge the designated bottom area and run it through a filter?
And I don't know how much bottom, like I said, your rivers run through bedrock, or down to the bedrock, and whatever sediment and whatever rocks have washed and islands have been created. And I don't know in that specific area, could you even get in there, and what would it look like to go in there and disrupt that river bottom? And plus you have where the EPA or whoever over the Rivers Corps of Engineers, what they would allow and says that you can and can't do. There's probably a lot of environmental issues that they would have to address doing that.
All right. And Lynn wants to know if people use the river for anything like fishing or swimming.
I absolutely would believe so. I know there's not a river here in Georgia that they don't utilize for those two things. So I would imagine that that's pretty much the same case up there.
All right. And SB 74, in a local case, a gun and box of ammo were found where they landed, but the cell phone was carried away and never found.
Yeah. And that's what I was saying, is I was surprised about how long it took that cell phone to get to the bottom. It never occurred to me it would be that long, and that in a river that if you tossed it in, that's running at a certain speed, it could be 100 yards away. I wouldn't have believed it until I did my controls.
And Steffa, thank you for the blue light special on aisle 3. They like my blue light
I
special.
like it though.
Oh, let's see here. William, in my opinion, the Kleins are tied to the Delphi murders in some way, and I believe they know who Bridge Guy is.
I most certainly believe they have something involvement in it. Absolutely. Is my opinion. I'm with you.
And why? KK is a pathological liar. Hope he's not lying to LE about the search.
And if whatever part that the Klein during the catfishing played a part in, like I said, I have no doubt that there's some part they played in this, in my opinion. But if it is totally relied upon something that he said, they would have gone in. They're going to do some polygraphs. They're going to do everything they can to determine, is he telling the truth or not? Is that through certain information that no one else would know? Is that through polygraphs? Is that through whatever evidence that he has or been able to present? Hopefully we'll find out in the coming days.
All right. And Kennedy, couldn't this item have been found by someone else over the last 5 years?
And that's what I was saying. That's my worst nightmare, that it has been found by someone else that doesn't know what they possess. And if law enforcement doesn't find it, will they address that issue? Hopefully so.
All right. And James, justice delayed is justice denied.
Yeah, and we hope it all comes to ends quickly, though.
All right. And Bean answered the question about the river. They said not a lot of fishing, but lots of kayaking. Never hardly ever see swimming.
Okay.
So that might be good, I suppose. Let's see here. And Michelle, in my opinion, Ellie has him in custody, but not saying anything. If he was still on the streets, he could disappear and never be found.
Absolutely.
Could be so.
Absolutely. And she knows. She knows. She's in the world of crime, and she understands everything about that. And she absolutely is correct.
And Brian, do you believe COVID has helped BG hide his identity that much more? Anytime he goes out, he's got a mask on.
Can't argue that point. And that's a good point to bring up, that over the last few years, he most certainly could wear a mask and nobody the wiser. Interesting perspective.
Mm-hmm. And Patricia, it looks like Ellie know what they're looking for. It's just a case of locating it, and they seem to determined to do that.
Yes, absolutely. I saw them way up on the bank today, and high up, higher than what I thought they would be. And I can't remember which person was out there videotaping, but it was. I was on one of the YouTube channels. I think it was Crime and Shame that had that. I was watching it and saw them way up there. I mean, it would almost have to be a flood stage where they were looking at.
All right. And Wendy, is it the cousin who lives there at the house where they are searching the river?
This is my understanding. Where they're searching is a couple, 3 miles away from where the Kleins live, although the Kleins house is near the river, but the bridge that they're looking at and the waterway currently, now they may be looking up there too. I don't know, but if they were, we most certainly probably have some images of it, because right now everything is focused on this bridge area.
All right. And Kathleen, do you think they'll review other divers' channels to see if they pulled anything from the Wabash River? I seem to remember seeing video of their pulls and treasures.
I'm sure that they have tried or will request all information at some point from everyone that in the area. I don't know if they have. Nothing been leaked of that anyone has done a neighborhood canvass in that area asking had they recovered anything yet. But is that something that law enforcement might do? Possible.
All right. And why? Could LA bring in help from surrounding towns to expand the search? Thanks.
Absolutely. I don't know who all the personnel are there now. I don't know which agencies are involved or what, task force of people committing from different agencies there, but most certainly they may.
And Patricia, if anything ever happens to me, will you come to the UK and show them how it's done, please, Steve? Yes, I will make sure he gets there.
By the time the boat got there, we would probably be, because I don't fly, but I'd be there on the fastest boat I could.
I'll fly. I'll start it. Let's see here. And Wendy, Indiana has caught so many pedophiles because of this case.
Absolutely. And that's the legacy that Libby and Abby most certainly is a positive and will always be looked at. That a lot of children have been saved due to that tragedy and the loss of those two innocent girls.
And Anne, I think they've got a boatload of social media and messaging data, but somehow it's inconclusive. This river evidence must be something quite specifically identifiable to the crime scene and to the perp.
Once again, absolutely. I believe so.
All right. And William, I definitely and always will back the blue. Thank you, William.
Thank you, sir.
Let's see here. In USA Libertarian, I have the feeling it is something that absolutely proves the crime. So it might be the weapon, but also possibly a recording of the murder.
The FBI most certainly hinted at the something that they wouldn't be surprised if something wasn't documented. So was that embellishing the search warrant? Don't know.
All right. And Teresita, could they still recover cell phone or hard drive data after 5 years?
I don't know. That's out of my league on this Google machine stuff. But maybe someone out there that has that knowledge. And I'll do some looking into that because that is an interesting question. Mm-hmm. How long in a harsh environment such as moving water and changing temperatures, what does that do, if anything, to anything that's collected in digitally?
We're going to put him on that this week. There you go.
What's that?
You got to figure that out.
I know.
All right. And Julia, if this tip was from Keegan and if he was lying about item location, etc., how long would they continue searching?
And that's what drives me to the part about that. I think that if he is the one that gave them this tip and that they will substantiate it at minimum with polygraphs and whatever other supporting evidence, because I don't think they would just commit this on the words of a known liar that might be setting the narrative and trying to get a liar's sentence by saying that I'm assisting law enforcement in this investigation.
All right. And Kimmy, is it possible to track or identify a burner phone if it pings at a crime scene?
I know they'll have the data of where the certain things are bought and how they're used. Where that is currently, like with the Snowden issue, the releasing that all of this information is collected is in some secretive cloud database somewhere by these governments. I don't know what all information they have. Don't know how easy it is to collect, other than it's there. And trying to figure out what information and what data is important and how you link it. Don't know. But there's some amazing people out there in the digital world that can process information on a level that is almost unimaginable.
And Wendy, I think the cops could get all the stuff from a hard drive or a cell phone from the cloud.
I know they would from her. She
I live in the cloud.
she lives in the cloud.
Yeah, I love my cloud. All right, let's see here. Here we go again. Let's see here. In my opinion, this is from DGR Dave. In my opinion, the raising and lowering of the river water levels just from nature alone could take something miles from the bridge.
You know, if it's something that could float, I would agree with you. But this is something that would sink, you know, just like heavy metals and metals that go to the bottom, that's heavier than the natural environment around it. It most certainly has the potential of going and easing itself down the river, but let's hope it's not miles. Let's hope it's yards.
Yeah, no kidding. Teresita, never heard of ground penetrating radar being used in water. Metal detectors should be easier to use, even though it can be tedious, speaking from experience.
Like I said, I've never heard of it, and like I said, and I most certainly would agree with that viewpoint. But I'll look into it because it may be possible, but I don't know what the advantages would be over a metal detector.
Mm-hmm. All right, and straight from the horse's mouth, Steve, do you think it could have been drugs that Keegan climbed through in the river to get rid of the evidence?
No, I don't. 5 years later, I don't think they'd be looking for drugs, regardless of what type of container it would be, and it would be extremely, unlikely that anything of that weight could have been maintained that close to the bridge. So, drugs is not on my list.
All right, and Molly, double murder in our area long ago. 2 girls thrown off a bridge. One body found about 3 miles down, the other never found. River 10 times the size of Wabash. So I hope they find it.
Yes. Now, bodies are a different thing than metal. Not trying to, but most certainly things happen with bodies in rivers that don't occur in other types of items or inanimate items because bodies will float and everything else as time goes on, and certain things occur in the natural order of things.
All right, so it's updated again. So if I miss it, Steve will check back on the comments. All right, and USA, Steve, at what point would they typically start negotiating with the death penalty?
The DA has the total call on that, and I'm sure that is it has to meet certain qualifying factors to even be considered. And I don't know what Indiana's qualifying for death penalty even exists, but here in the state of Georgia, it most certainly would hit that because you have the abduction, transport from one point to another murder site, and then there's other considerations in manner of death. Is that true in Indiana? I don't know.
Double rainbows. Question: can't the service provider dredge up all the data from a cell phone?
I would imagine, and agree with you on that. But now there's some data that may be just depends on what type of cards and what type of memory and how information was put on that phone.
And straight from the horse's mouth, Steve, do you have an update on the Asian man that washed up in the Wabash Canal? The rumor is it could be a homicide.
No, I haven't. I've been right now I'm absolutely overwhelmed
He's
with
covered up.
certain. Yeah, I'm covered up, and so I haven't been getting updated on as much as I need to be updated
If
on.
you have an article on it, send it over.
Yeah, most certainly send me an email and send me whatever you can on it. I appreciate it.
And Ann, wonder if another option might be LE is doing this to pressure KK rather than on a tip from KK. In other words, they're searching something elsewhere incriminating of him such that he'd better start talking.
Whatever method it takes to put pressure on anyone to get them to assist with this, I'm all for.
All right, and SB 74, I'm sure Ellie knows, but do we know whether items were thrown from the driving bridge or the nearby pedestrian bridge?
And which side of each of those bridges? Because it, most certainly that will be looked at, because whoever supplied the information would have told them which direction they were heading, which side of the bridge, proximity of where they will have thrown it, and for the efforts to be put in on this.
And DGR Dave, I think any of the negotiations ongoing are between LE and KK's new lawyer to settle on a sentence for the CSAM.
Could be. Should be getting close, aren't we?
It's 9:17. Yeah. All right, so let's see here. And Bonnie, this is a good point. Do they ever do Wabash River cleanups with public events? It's done here after every 4th of July. That's interesting.
I don't know. And on all our waters, also they have certain cleanup dates for different water systems. Don't know what that is out there though.
Yeah, that's interesting though. And straight from the horse's mouth, Steve, is it true that Keegan Klein has gained weight in prison? They say he's up to 400 pounds.
I've seen some pictures of him that most certainly looks nothing like his Facebook pictures made a few years ago. He appears to be quite a bit heavier now.
And this is from Ann. Mr. Steve, if I'm ever in an interrogation room and you walk in, I'm confessing, hands down, game over.
I hope you're never in an interrogation
Me
room. But call me before you even get to the position that you would need to be in one.
Let's see here.
Don't want my community in jail or interrogated.
I think I need some coffee. Let's see here. And Steffa, I see what you're doing. You know I can see your chats at Nikki Moore.
Oh.
All right. And Wendy, there are rumors that the crime was perpetrated to make a snuff film. It is rumored that this is why the Kleins were in Las Vegas to sell the movie. Wonder if the movie is in the river.
And like I said, that's a theory that's out there. I don't believe that theory line, and I don't have any evidence has been given to us that, or I've seen in any affidavit that supports that. But I can't. Everyone's most certainly has the right to have whatever opinions on some of that stuff and theories, but that's not something I believe was the purpose or the cause of these girls' deaths.
Yeah. All right, let's see here. And Annie, like everyone else, I just want this solved so bad.
Absolutely.
Yes. And no nickname. I wonder who is acting squirrely watching this search. I hope there are eyes on all associates of KK. Keep up the good content. Loving it.
That is a very good observation.
That is a very good observation.
And because if it is true, you're exactly right. There's some people that's if they were the perpetrators and they got away and did away with evidence in this location, yeah, they're having some sleepless nights.
Mm-hmm. All right. And Teresita, thanks, Steve and Mrs. Steve, for making this a great channel and community. You've chosen fantastic mods, and the chat group is awesome. Just love being here. This old woman has to call it a night. Right behind you there, Teresita. And we do have fantastic mods.
We do.
Y'all are the best. And thank you, thank you. Let's see here. And Perry has an off-topic question. Do you want it?
Sure, I don't know.
All right. And Perry, he says, that's off topic, but do you think Ashley McDonald was a victim of Cleotha Abston?
I don't know all that much about the cases up there, and I don't know all the victims that possibly could be involved. But they'll all be looked at, and because I think there's multiples of that in other investigations. So when the information comes out more and more, it will be very revealing.
All right. And this is Tracy. Do you think it's possible Libby caught on to KK's catfishing and said something to him, causing him to entrap her at the bridge? Ooh.
That most certainly it would be the motive for and a possible motive for what has occurred.
No, it just did its thing again. Okay, let's see here. Jumping Jack Flash, has KK passed a poly regarding Delphi?
I think in some of the transcripts they were talking about some polygraphs, and I don't know which ones he's passed, and has he passed any since then? How has his attorney allowed him to take, and what polygraphs has he taken? Because they can only go into certain areas on each polygraph. They can't just go in and ask him across the spectrum of different questions about different cases in one polygraph. They have to be very specific in a certain line of questioning.
All right. And Kathleen, at Steve, would you be able to share info on the cold cases you will be working on soon?
That'll be up to the families. I always offer, and I tell all the families that regardless of what I do with their cases, if they wish for me to share information, I will share it. But if they wish to keep it confidential, I will do that also. Has no bearing on what efforts I'll put into the case. Because regardless, it's not about just one thing. It's always about just what we can do for that family and for that victim.
All right. And Dark Arts said that KK failed a polygraph in 2017.
Okay.
All right. And I think you are done.
All right, guys. I appreciate y'all coming here tonight, and I hope that we've had some type of clarification of some of the information, and so that y'all can have some decent conversations and debates, and see if, like I said, don't always just take the word of what any one person says as the gospel, because somewhere the truth is within 2 or 3 opinions and across the board. So y'all be great to each other, be nice to each other, and hopefully we can bring some type of impact and bring some closure to this case. As we move forward, I'll be letting some of our members, we've got to get caught up on some of the benefits and some of the perks that you'll be receiving, as I'm overwhelmed with y'all's support. It means so much to me, and we'll be getting out there trying to make sure everyone recognizes all the perks that we're going to be able to offer you, and your support means so much, not only to us, but to these other families. And I look forward to working with them. And I most certainly will be explaining and telling these families that you, my community, and everyone out there has helped us, that y'all have played a part in this. And we thank y'all for that. But I'll see y'all soon, and y'all have a great night.
Thanks, guys.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.